Hello, and welcome back to the Richard Taliaferro podcast, where we take a look at career insights and give advice to career changers. If you're the woman who has always figured it out for your career, your family, and your community, and somewhere along the way, your own goals and dreams got pushed down to the bottom of the list, today's guest is for you. Meghan DeFord is a life coach and strategist who helps women show up for themselves and go after their big goals without blowing up the life they built. After 2 decades of leading multi-million-dollar philanthropic campaigns, she got really good at asking for everyone else except for herself. Then a divorce and a layoff hit within weeks of each other, and that changed. Now she helps other women do the same through a structured, strategic framework rooted in your values. Not hustle culture, not manifest and move on, but real goals, real plans, real life. Meghan is the author of the On Purpose Journal and the host of the podcast, Wait, What Do You Do Again? She's also a mom, a runner, binger of a good TV series, and part of the Beehive. Meghan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Sure, you're welcome. And I just want to start out by talking a little bit about how we met.
Yeah.
Which was really cool.
I know it was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, you reached out to me to be on your podcast, and I was eternally grateful for that opportunity. And it was really the first time I had the opportunity to sort of talk about my journey that thus far and, going from journalism into coaching. And I'm curious about, for example, like how did you come to start a podcast?
So really great question. I spent my career in philanthropy and asking people for money, like very specifically leading teams and asking for money. And in doing so, I've met so many interesting people, most of whom like you'll never know their name, right? And you find out their story. It's almost like a first date situation, right? It's like, hey, like I know this thing about you. Maybe you went to a university or you played a certain sport or whatever. You were a member of an organization. Like I know that about you, but tell me more. And everybody never thought they had an interesting story, right? And everybody's story is so interesting. Yeah. And so I had this idea to start a podcast. I had had it for a long time. And I just decided one day, I was like, just do it. And I grew up in the mid-Atlantic. I lived in DC for over a decade, almost 2 decades. And the first thing you ask someone is like, what do you do? And so it's one of those things where it's like, wait, what do you do again? And that's sort of the genesis of the podcast. And it's really just regular people doing amazing things like you.
And I really love the title of your podcast. I think it's wonderful. And it sort of stops people in their tracks because like you just said, the standard, question you ask somebody you just met is, what do you do?
Right.
But you have a knack for getting underneath that question and really finding out what people truly do and what people truly think. And you've got a great breadth of guests that you bring on your show. And wait, where do you find them?
Thank you. So in the beginning, I actually, the way I found you was like a Facebook group. There were like groups that I joined and people pitched themselves. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And now I do have people reaching out to me, which has been awesome. And the other thing that I've started to do is reach out, especially to like faculty members or people that I can really see what their resume and experience is. So like for October, we did this like spooky season. And so I was like, ooh, what do I want to talk about? And I was like, Shirley Jackson. So I Googled like foremost Shirley Jackson scholars and found like Dr. Bernice Murphy at Trinity College in Dublin. And like, the thing, Richard, that is amazing to me is like people say yes. Like when you ask, people say yes. they're not, I don't pay them, like they're not
Yeah.
getting anything out of it, so to speak. And it's just really cool. It's really cool. So it's a combination of like looking for people reaching out, and then some of these communities that I'm a part of.
That's fantastic. And folks, if you get a chance to listen to Megan's podcast, please do. It's really interesting and really cool.
Thank you.
So, yeah. And so I want to talk about, so, you know, as we just mentioned, what do you do? And
Yeah.
so I'm curious about the journey of you going from working with these philanthropic organizations and making that move into what you're doing now, which is coaching. So
Yeah.
could you take us through that?
Yeah. What a long, strange journey it has been.
Yeah.
So I'll try and give the really condensed version of it. And I've spent most of my career, as I said, in philanthropy. And I actually started my career, I don't know if you know this, I started my career in college admissions, like recruiting students and making decisions and all
Okay.
this stuff. That's
Okay.
a fun party fact about me. So anyway, I had moved to South Florida where I am now. I had been recruited for a job, and a few years later I was laid off. And then during COVID. And then a few weeks prior to that, I had also gone through a divorce, both things over Zoom within weeks of each other. And it
Oh,
was one of those
wow.
like, holy shit kind of moments.
God. Yeah,
And,
definitely.
I have the benefit of, we have a relationship, and you and I both have been maybe overachievers since, I don't know, the time we were in our mother's wombs, like,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
always like striving to be the best. And I
Mhm.
had led teams and had experienced a lot of success, and I really got the wind knocked out of my sails. I mean, I really was like, whoa. I had never not had a plan. And like anybody else, I was in a fortunate position where I didn't need to find a job right away, but I had planned on continuing in fundraising and alumni engagement. My ultimate goal at the time, and I'm sort of laughing, my ultimate goal at the time was to be the head of the Alumni Association at University of Maryland, my alma mater. That was always the goal. Like everything was going to lead me back to that point. And that was still the goal. But I wouldn't say in a tailspin, but I was in one of those pivot moments of your life, and my identity had really been rocked. I was figuring out who I was as a single mom during a pandemic where my kids are at home, like for school. It just a lot of change. And what I found was a lot of inspiration and a
Okay.
lot of data, but no action. And I was in therapy. I'm a huge proponent of therapy, but even that wasn't what I needed. Like I needed more. I needed like more of that action sort of piece. And
Mhm.
so this is all a really long way to say that I continued on in philanthropy, but I also did a coaching program as I was looking for another job. And I figured like, oh, this will really help me as a manager, as a better leader of teams. And it
Mhm.
did, but it also was like, oh my God, this is what I needed. This was the intersection. Like, I'm not a therapist, but I'm more than just like an Instagram quote, right? Like, this is really a
Sure.
way for me to take that leadership experience and how I relate to people and how I've learned, especially through philanthropy, which I can talk about if you're interested in, like how to move things forward from a concept to reality. And so I did my coaching program. I did it through Lumia. I loved it. It was awesome. Had an amazing cohort of people that I did it with, and it was just like kind of the right time. But I continued on in philanthropy, and I think there were a few things about it. I think, and we talked about this, like there's a
Mhm.
lot of bullshit in the coaching community,
Yeah.
and I kind of
Yeah.
cringed at calling myself a coach. Like I gotta be like I'm just being really honest, right? It
Right.
just, especially coming from these worlds of academia where like I'm working with
Sure.
like the
Yeah.
smartest people
Yeah.
I've ever met in my life, like literal brain surgeons and rocket scientists, and being
Right
like,
there
hi,
with
I'm a
you.
coach. So it was my own issue. And I wanted the safety of what I knew. But I just kept feeling this pull of like, you have changed, but you haven't made changes. And so I sort of like dipped my toe in, and I started smiling when you asked about the podcast, because I feel like that was a little bit of dipping my toe into doing something different. I started taking on clients just a little bit, and then like I finally made the full, pivot. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been wonderful. And I really love being able to help people who are super, and it's women. Like I specifically work with women. I think women are awesome. But specifically women, typically like 35 and older, who have like kicked ass in their lives. Like they are super successful in their careers. They show up for everybody else. They show up in their
Mm-hmm.
community. Like when you look at their life resume, so to speak, tick, 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 they have checked all the boxes.
Boxes, yeah.
And yet their goals, their dreams seem to be at the bottom of the list, or they haven't even like thought about them in a long time. And
Sure.
so those are the women that I work with. And look, you got to make lunches for people. Bills still have to be paid.
Yep.
You still got to go to the grocery store. You still got to have fun in life. Like, and my approach is not, we're not going to blow all that up, right? Like there's no point in blowing all of that up. If you're at that point, there's probably more going on that like you need to address, probably with a therapist, frankly.
Yeah.
But that's who I work with. And I think I've used not only my coaching program, but also the experience I've had as a supervisor, a senior leader, to really inform that. And I don't know if you want to talk about like sort of what that philanthropy background is, or because I'll just, Richard, you know me, I'll just keep yapping.
Let's see. I want to touch on the philanthropic part of it, but a couple of things that you said that I want to touch on. One is the pivot moment that you felt that you were at. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and also talk a little bit about what you are seeing with your clients in approaching or being at that pivot moment?
So the pivot moment for me, it wasn't like a lightning bolt kind of thing, but I think there was a part of me that started to realize not only did I really technically need to do something different. In being divorced, I have 2 kids, and I wasn't going to leave the state without my kids. So that really restricted lots of opportunities. And if I did, what that looked like, I didn't want for my kids. I didn't want for their dad. Like I didn't want any of that. So that was sort of one of the first pivot points, right? Actually, and I guess the second pivot point was when I was laid off. So much of my identity was like, I am a fundraiser. I am the leader of the Alumni Association. I do these things. This is who I am. And all of those things are going to get me to, Maryland, right? Yeah. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, holy shit, like, I'm not that. Who am I? And it seems so silly now, but if anybody's listening to this and you're in your late 30s, early 40s, 50s, whatever, you're having that moment, lean into it. I think I resisted it so much. And not that I wasted time, but like I could have used that time in a way that would have been more beneficial to me. So I think that like being laid off, that pivot of like, who am I? What do I actually want to do? And then also this like, not who am I as a mom, but like, oh, your opportunities now have really changed in terms like of the physical location of where you need to be. And so those 2 things I think really started it.
Okay. And I'm also curious again, both you and I talk a lot about identity, like who we are, who we have staked our claim as human beings. And then, we've found ourselves having to pull up those stakes as well. Like, talk a little bit about how difficult that was for you to, that you put in so much time and so much effort into philanthropic campaigns, and now that's gone. And so now what?
Yeah, I would scream, but I want to preserve the listeners' ears. I mean, it was really hard. It was really hard. And I was raised in an environment, I was raised by a single mom. we were always drilled into our heads, like we always knew we were going to college. Like we were first generation, but like I was going to college, but you were going to college to get a degree, to get a career for a job you're going to stay in for 25 years, right? And you're going to be stable. It's not about pursuing your passion. Like, who the hell cares what you want? Like, you need a salary and insurance. And I think that's like the worst thing to consider. But at the same time, there just was no wiggle room or opportunity, even as a child and into like that formational younger adult time, to think beyond that. And I was good at what I did. But I became what I did, who I am. And so it was extremely difficult for me. It was extremely difficult for a lot of reasons, because I also was then, gosh, in many ways, I feel like I'm kind of realizing this now. Like I felt like maybe I was almost betraying, like my mom did the best she could, you know what I mean? And like by making that different decision, it really was going against sort of what she said. And this is a really long way of saying, I didn't see the evolution of self as something that was natural. And which is interesting, because when I see people who have had multiple different careers, multiple jobs, multiple experiences, I'm like, that's so cool. But I never related it to myself. And so it was extremely, extremely difficult for me. And I started thinking about, okay, well, like you're good at fundraising, you're good at community building, you're good at certain things. That's not who you are. Who you are is your values, right? Like ultimately at your core, that's who you are. And so I started really exploring that as like, you don't necessarily have a passion for raising money for certain organizations, but you do have a passion for building community. You do have a passion and a value for leaving the world a better place than when you found it. And when you start viewing it that way, my world opened up. It was like, wow, like there's so many things I can do. And if you can't tell from this conversation already, I have lots of thoughts all the time. And then it was like, there's too many. And I was like, maybe I'll be an astronaut.
Yeah. As we're recording this, Artemis 2 is, about to wrap up its incredible, fascinating, fantastic moon mission. And we've been, trading text messages back and forth all week, just captivated by what's happening.
Yeah. And so it, is one of those things where then it almost swung in the other direction of like, I can do anything. And like, okay, well, maybe not anything. Like maybe, even within those values, like maybe not everything is going to move forward with it. So, it was just taking that time to explore it. And then I think what started to happen is I stayed in philanthropy and I could feel myself moving further and further and further away from it. And really, I mean, when you're not supposed to be somewhere anymore, and it wasn't the organizations, it wasn't the causes, it wasn't the teams, it was me. It was me. Yeah. And like I said, like I had changed, but I hadn't made those changes.
Sure. And you acknowledged where you were and how important do you think it is for people to constantly and continually know themselves as they are going about their jobs and going about their lives and growing older? And how important do you think that is?
It's critically important, and it also can be really exhausting. I don't want people to feel like there's some sort of like they're an algorithm that they have to optimize, like anything's wrong with them. I think if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I love my job and I love my life, awesome,
great,
like awesome, great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And we recently talked about friction on the podcast that we share, but I think when you start running into that friction, or you start having those moments, instead of what I did, which was just like cling on for dear life to what I knew, lean into it with curiosity. It doesn't mean you have to abandon anything, but lean into like, what is this moment telling me? And I'll be honest with you, Richard, like when I started thinking about my values, I was like, of course I know what my values are. And I was like, oh, I don't really know what my values are. And I was like, I have 30 values. And I was like, no, you don't. Like, you know, you got to really like whittle this down. And so, you know, I think it's a good thing. And I think we are so busy. Like we are so busy all the time that if we can take, even if it's an hour a week for ourselves, to check in with ourselves. And it can be about anything, right? It can be about your identity, work, life, whatever it is. It could be about like a sunrise that you saw, but like getting back to yourselves. We have so many distractions and it's hard. It's really hard. So I think it's critical, but I don't want people to think that like something's wrong with them, or that like they, in every moment they have to be thinking like, am I living my identity? Right. I think the more that life is flowing, awesome, lean into that, baby. But like when you start hitting that roadblocks or speed bumps or whatever, like that's when you need to kind of like pause, take a second, and just again be curious about what's going on here. Don't judge it, don't try and diagnose it, just like lean into it a little bit.
Sure. And you know, as Meghan mentioned, we share a podcast called Scrambled Eggs. It's a fun podcast where we talk about the messy middle of careers and career transitions. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. And one of the things that we talk about quite often on that podcast is values. And how important do you think it is for people to know what their values are?
I think it's everything. I think values show up on our calendars. It shows up in how we present ourselves. It shows up, or it should be, right? It should be showing up in our actions, our thoughts, our time, how we are living our lives. And for me, I can speak about to the fact that like I had identified so much with the organizations I worked for, which by the way, like great organizations, right? Like these are awesome nonprofits. And there's a reason I love doing that work, but like I had let that subsume who I was and just sort of like map onto me that I was like, oh, actually, like I don't really, I am putting a lot of time and energy into this, but like, is that a value of mine? And so I do think it's critical. And people, I also want to just address this as well. I grew up Catholic. I am not a practicing Catholic, even though Pope Leo, let me tell you something, he's working hard, baby. I'm always like, oh, maybe I should go to church. But anyway, whether you're spiritual, religious, Orthodox, whatever, right? I think sometimes values get this like bent to it in religiosity, and that's not what I'm talking about. There's certainly that sort of moral, ethical, whatever. But when I'm talking values, it's like I said, community is one of mine. Like it's really important to me, and community can mean a lot of different things. And when you're starting to look at your life and you're like, this isn't showing up anywhere, so either it's not a value I hold, or I need to make some changes. And the more that you can live in alignment, in parallel with those values, you're going to look to your left and look to your right, and you're going to be like, yeah, I'm on the right path. Like I'm doing the right thing. And that's again, where I think you start feeling that friction. You start realizing like, oh, I'm not pursuing, you know, and again, I think it could be a big goal. It could just be like what you're doing on the weekends for yourself. Like I am not using my time in a way that is serving who I am at my core. And that's tough. It's really tough. And the other thing too, to your previous question, is your values can change throughout life. So it is good to think about it and to, you know, just do that every 5 years, like a checkup, right? Like check in with yourself. Like this,
right. You go to the doctor, you know, to get that checkup, do a values checkup every so often.
Exactly. And in clients, it's interesting because I start with a values exercise with them. That's like their first piece of homework. And it's always harder than anybody expects. They're like, this took a long time. I'm like, I know, that's so great. And then when we start talking about goals and goal setting, a lot of times they have to go back to their values and sort of rearrange them, redo them, because I'm like, oh, you said that, I don't know, like financial stability was a value of yours. Awesome, cool. I'm not seeing that in any of your goals. And they're like, oh, you know, or like, huh. And so it is difficult. and their goals really, I was like, so which one needs to change here? Like what needs to happen here? And a lot of times they need to go back and either drop it, and it's sort of like a secondary, I don't know, like a secondary value, but like it's not necessarily a driving force. So it's work that like sometimes as we go through the work, we change. And I think again, as we go through this work and through life, our values change as well.
And I think it's important to know and understand that we're dynamic beings. We're not static. We're not frozen in amber. That we can change, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And so I want to go back to something that you said a little while ago, and it's about betrayal. And you talked about feelings of betrayal, a little bit earlier. And when I started doing this, when I started going into coaching after I got laid off, I felt those pangs of betrayal, coming from, 26 years at a, prestigious newspaper, had been in journalism all my life, and felt like I was betraying not just the all the training that I've done, but the people I worked with as well. And I wonder, in your work as a coach, do you see that in your clients, and how do you help your clients navigate that path?
Yeah. It could be betrayal. It could show up as anxiety or fear. I think most commonly I see judgment, like judgment of themselves, self-judgment. We had talked about this before too, like the idea of being selfish.
Yeah.
And so how I navigate that with them is I ask them to sit with it. Like one of the things that I really like people to do is not give me an immediate answer. Like we work for 9 sessions together or longer if you want to, but like, we don't have to rush this process. There is not an immediacy. This is really deep work, and it's personal work, and you have to give thought to it. And in a world where everybody's asking you for more, now, that can be difficult and something you need to ease into. And so I ask clients to sit with that. And what I ultimately ask is, what is this protecting you from? And where does this come from? And oftentimes we give that surface layer, right, of exactly what you said, like all my degrees and all the work that I've put in to get to this point, and now I'm just going to throw it away. You know what I mean? Like, okay, there's some judgment there, betrayal there, whatever. What's underneath of that? For me, it was like, yeah, your mom cleaned houses on the weekends so that you could get a great education. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Like whatever those things are, it's like, oh, that's really what's going on here, right? Like that's what's going on here. And is that fair? Is that fair? And the other question too, I'll ask is it true? Like, I know for me, and I've talked about this, like I have, it's so funny. I have a fear of visibility as someone with 2 podcasts and like posts on social media every day, but I do have this fear of visibility. Because it's actually a fear of judgment, and that judgment comes from stuff in my childhood. And I am not a therapist. I can't work through like the nitty-gritty of that with you, but typically there's an aha moment that we have, and it's like, oh, that's what it's from. Like it's from this other, it's not true. I'm making it up in my head because it's going to prevent me from doing that thing I'm scared of, with an outcome that doesn't exist except for up here in my brain, right? So like, I know that you do this as well. What's your next best step that can move you beyond that? Not a huge thing. So maybe it's posting twice a week on social media, if that's part of your job, or maybe it's, whatever it is, betrayal. Maybe it is a journaling session with yourself, right? Like there's lots of different ways and modalities you can go about it, but it is sitting with yourself, asking, what is this protecting me from? What is the underlying part of this? is it true? And then making that next move to like create safety within yourself so that you can actually move forward. And it's hard. We've talked about this. It's hard.
Yeah,
It's just hard stuff.
it is. And as a coach, how do you help your clients feel safe enough to ask those questions of themselves?
They're amazing.
Mm,
I mean, I think I feel so honored that people choose to share this journey with me, and then we're going to do it together, and it's a co-created process. Like Richard and I could sit down with someone and give you a plan, but like that would be our plan. Like this has to be a co-created process. And I'm just so honored the way that people open up. And I think it's because they're ready. I think by the time that they get to us, they realize like I can keep doing what I'm doing. I can keep feeling the way I'm feeling. And in a year, I'm going to be doing the same thing. And like, I've been there. I have been there. I am still there with stuff, right? Like, I have a coach, I have a therapist. Like, it's like, it's very natural and normal. But I think when people are ready, I do ask them, like, this is all private, it's confidential. I don't put anything into AI. Like, this is a co-created space. I really try and create that container for us of safety. And I ask them questions like, tell me if you don't like this style, or that sort of thing. So I try and create a safe environment that way, but I'm just amazed by people and how vulnerable and honest that they are, and that's usually when we can start accelerating things, right? And it's a big responsibility that we have.
it is indeed, because you've got a person in front of you who's at a very vulnerable spot, and they want to get better, they want to improve, but they don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
And they're sort of, maybe they're at their wits end, or they're just like, it's been another year, I've been sitting doing the same thing, I need help.
Yeah.
And I think as coaches, I think it's really important for us to, yes, support them and hold their hand, and also give them the confidence to know that they can do it. They know they can do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a mom of two kids, and I've always like seen my role as a parent as getting my kids to a place where they don't need me anymore, right? Like they've got the tools in the toolbox, and they, not to be perfect.
Yeah.
They're going to make mistakes, but they don't need me or their dad anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Very tangibly. And I feel that way with my clients. I'm like, I want you to get to a point where you are confident in moving forward and can take these skills and move forward. I think the biggest thing that I see with people, and again, it's human nature, it's accountability. We can all make a list, we can all put stuff on our calendar, but like, it's real easy not to do it. So I think that's the other thing too, is like holding people accountable in the kindest way possible, and figuring out if something's going on underneath of that, but really just checking in and being like, hey, I'm your cheerleader. I'm the person who wants to see you succeed. And we all need that in life. We really do. We need someone who is just on our side.
And
so
I'm curious also that, you're seeing people sort of lean into AI as their coach. But as you just said, it's, how is the AI, whatever model you use, how is that going to keep you accountable to what you said you were going to do, and keeping you accountable to yourself as well?
Yeah. I mean, AI is like telling the worst person that like, that's such a valid point, and you go for it, king. Like, it's like, I mean, AI, I'm a big fan of it in many ways. But I mean, I use Claude, and I love Claude. And Claude called me Tiffany the other week, and I was like, who the hell's Tiffany? I was like, oh, sorry, Megan. And I was like, what?
Oh, wow.
So to your point, humans can make mistakes, AI can make mistakes as well, but the differentiator is our ability to critically think, to connect, have empathy. Again, I don't have all the answers for you. I'm not going into any coaching client saying like I have all the answers. What I do have is 20 years of experience in very specific things. I've led teams. I've gone through certifications. I have this training. I have certainly life experience, which can't be your only experience.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's kind of a flag if someone's like, well, I got a divorce and now I'm a divorce coach. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And maybe they're awesome,
Yeah.
but like, just do your research. But when you put all of these things together and you can connect with someone else, and I don't know if you're this way, like, I don't work with everybody. Like, I'm not going to be a good fit for everyone. And that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's totally cool.
Totally
And so AI isn't going to do that. If you want to be validated in all of your thoughts, awesome. AI is great.
AI is there for you. It's
There,
totally
there for you, baby.
Yeah.
But it's just, I'm not worried about it in terms of individuals who are who want a depth to what they're working on.
You've touched on something again in a couple of points where, as I think at the outside world, people think of coaches as knowing all. And
Yeah.
both you and I know that's not true.
Yeah.
And how do you show up in a way that makes sure that your client knows that you're a human being and not a guru?
Yeah. And I'm glad you used that word, because I do think, especially when people are in a vulnerable place in their life, they are looking for someone to tell them what to do. And that's dangerous. You have all the answers inside of you. You do.
Exactly.
And if there are growth points, you have the ability to grow. Right? Like, you do not need, frankly, a white woman with a nose piercing like me to tell you what to do, right? So I'm just going to call it out. I'm just going to call it out. Right?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And so how do I let them know that? So I tell them that, like, this is a co-creative process. And if I don't know the answer, if this is way beyond my ability or whatever, which go figure, things are, I'll help you find the resources that you need. Like, it is a gift to be able to tell someone, hey, I can't do that. Let's look up, whatever. Or I have a network of either coaches that I work with, or because of my career in philanthropy, individuals that I can reach out to and be like, hey, I have a quick question about this, or would you be willing to talk to this person? And there is no point in me trying to help someone by bullshitting my way through it. Like, that's just not, and fortunately, it really hasn't come up too often. But where it comes up a lot is with therapy. And when we start to veer into some of these realms, because it's close, right? But like, I am not trained to be able to dissect certain things with you. And I will say, like, I really think this is something you should explore with a therapist and be really upfront with that. And so I think that vulnerability of saying, like, I don't have the answer, or let's find it together, let me get you those resources, is really important. And if you're looking for a coach, ask them that.
Yeah. And that coach shouldn't be afraid of being vulnerable and saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a certain amount of bravery to say that. And one of the things that we do as coaches is model good behavior.
Yes.
And model vulnerability and having the courage to say, I don't know. Let's find that out. And so, it's really important, I think, for people who are looking for coaches. Let me take that back. Who are looking for therapists to not go to coaches. We don't do the same things. I make clear that I'm not a therapist.
Right.
And there's certain things that are going to be over my head that let me point you in the direction that you need to go.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it's really, I think coaches are well-intentioned. And I actually know a lot of therapists that are coaches, which is awesome. And can kind of switch in between them. I've actually used a coach like that before, and it was cool. She was like, do you mind if I go into this mode? Like, she asked my permission first.
That's great.
Which was cool. But I think it's often well-intentioned. And especially if you've experienced therapy, like, you want to share that because it's hard, but it's amazing, like how it can transform your life.
Right.
But you have to hold those boundaries and really have a deep understanding of your role and what you do and what you're capable of. And again, I think when you're looking for a coach or talking to a coach, it's really important that you start asking these questions. And, you know, I'll give an example. That fear of visibility and there's judgment underneath of it. There is not a coach who can help me with the stuff that happened in my childhood. That sounds so dire, right? But to unpack that, you know, we all have trauma from different parts of our lives, and unpack that in a way that is safe and protects your mental health. You know, like, and that is why they go to a lot of school. Like, that is why they have a lot of education for that. So again, I think sometimes people want coaches to tell them what to do. They think coaches are going to hand them a blueprint and everything's going to be fine. And that isn't our role. It's not.
It's not a role. It's, you know, we're not a sports coach who sends a play into the quarterback or the point guard and they execute it. It's, as you said very well, it's a co-creative process, you know, that our clients have to take an active role in.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the thing is, you and I could probably sit down with someone for 90 minutes, hear what they needed, and give a plan.
Yeah.
And it probably wouldn't be that bad. But the reality is, it's my plan for you. It's not your plan for you. Yes. And that's the difference. And when people find that self-efficacy and that trust and that knowing that, like, you've got this, like, babe, you have got this. You know, as a coach, it's almost like pulling it out, right? Like, a lot of our sessions are me asking questions and you sitting there and thinking about it. Like, that's a lot of it. And then saying, this is what I heard. This is how we're going to move forward. Like how you said you wanted to move forward. Did I hear that right? Okay. Like, and then during the week, how's it going? You know, and like adjusting and things like that. It's not some magical process.
No,
it's not, but it's coming from you. And the coolest thing is, after a couple weeks, someone says something and you're like, whoa, wait, I've got 4 weeks of evidence that you can do this, right? I have 8 weeks of evidence. And they're like, oh yeah, I can. And I'm like, you can go do it.
And sometimes people just need a reminder that they can do it.
Yes.
And that's what we do as coaches.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah. So Meghan, as we wrap up today, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to touch on?
My God, so many things, Richard. No, but Richard knows I am a certified yapper. No, I think, you know, I am so appreciative of you having me on as a guest. You know, I just think the world of you. I think you're so genuine and the real deal. I would say to people, you know, Richard and I met as strangers and now we've become friends and co-hosts and all that stuff. And it's really cool. And I think it can feel scary to put yourself out there in any sort of capacity in life, right? To be vulnerable and to just put yourself in a position where someone may say no. I promise you won't die, right? On most situations. And people want to help, and you just never know where life is going to take you. So like, I hope people eat up everything the universe has for us and bet on yourself, because that ultimately is that self-trust of like, no, I deserve good things. And people want to help me. People want to see me grow, and I'm deserving of that. And so I'll leave it there. But I just think this is such a cool case in point of that, of like, you know, I texted Richard a picture of a woodpecker because, like, I think midlife you just start liking watching birds, but like, never did I ever think over a year ago when you came on my podcast that like I'd be like, oh, look at this cool woodpecker.
Exactly. And I want people to know that you reached out to me to do your podcast and, did the podcast, had a wonderful time, didn't think anything of it for months. And then last fall, you reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you want to do a podcast together?" I was like, "Hey, what? Huh?" And have to tell you, I'm so grateful that you thought of me for that. And I'm very grateful of all of the talks that we've had, all the text messages about
Yeah.
woodpeckers and moons and also and that sort of thing. And I'm again very grateful that our paths crossed.
Yeah.
And I want to continue this as time goes on. So
I
thank you.
agree. I
Yeah.
feel like we should end this the way that like we've been obsessed with Artemis, like heart, hands, copy. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you so much, Richard. This was great. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
So, Megan, how do people reach you?
That's a great question. So they can find me on my website, Meg DeFord, DEFORD.com. And it's the same for Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Just basically Google Meg DeFord and you will find me somehow on there.
All right. Great. Thanks, Megan. Really
Thanks, Richard.
enjoyed it. And we'll be talking again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Bye.
Bye. If you're looking for work that works for you, come find me at richardtaliaferro.com. Thanks for listening and talk to you next week.